Chapter 1. The Foundation of CEO Thinking. Welcome to this exploration of the CEO mindset. Before we dive into the strategies, the tactics, and the frameworks that define exceptional leadership, we need to understand what separates those who think like CEOs from everyone else. It's not primarily about the title on your business card. It's not about the corner office or the authority to make final decisions. The CEO mindset is a way of thinking, a perspective that can be developed, refined, and mastered regardless of your current position in an organization. When I talk about the CEO mindset, I'm referring to a fundamental shift in how you perceive problems, opportunities, and your role in the world. It begins with ownership. This is the first principle. True CEOs, whether they run Fortune 500 companies or solo ventures, operate from a place of complete ownership, not just of their role, but of the entire enterprise. This ownership mentality means that when something goes wrong, you don't immediately look for someone else to blame. When an opportunity is missed, you examine what you could have done differently. This isn't about guilt or shame. It's about recognizing that you have agency, and that agency extends further than most people believe. Think about how most people navigate their work lives. They arrive at their jobs, complete their assigned tasks, and leave. Their mental framework is transactional. They exchange hours and effort for compensation. A CEO thinks differently. A CEO sees the entire system. They understand how each function connects to others. They comprehend how a decision made in one department ripples through the entire organization. This systemic thinking is not something you're born with. It's developed through deliberate observation and practice. The second foundational element of the CEO mindset is a relentless focus on results. Not effort, not intentions, not how hard you worked. Results. A CEO knows that the world doesn't care about your process if the outcome doesn't deliver value. This doesn't mean cutting corners or abandoning ethics. It means developing an obsessive clarity about what success looks like and then structuring everything toward that outcome. When you adopt this mindset, you begin to ask different questions. Instead of asking if you're busy, you ask if what you're doing is moving the needle. Instead of asking if you completed your to-do list, you ask if the to-do list even matters. The third foundation is financial literacy. You don't need an MBA to think like a CEO, but you do need to understand money. Not money in an abstract sense, but money as it flows through organizations. Cash flow, margins, unit economics, return on investment. These aren't just accountant concerns. They're the language of business, and fluency in this language changes how you make decisions. When you understand that a $1,000 initiative might consume a quarter's profit margin, your perspective shifts. When you realize that saving 10% on operational costs is equivalent to selling significant additional products, your priorities clarify. But here's what separates the truly exceptional from those who merely operate competently. The CEO mindset includes a deep understanding of human psychology and motivation. You can have the clearest strategy and the strongest financial model, but if you don't understand people, you'll never execute at the highest level. This means understanding yourself first, your fears, your biases, your triggers, your blind spots. Then it means understanding others. What motivates them? What scares them? How do they prefer to receive information? How do they like to be recognized? The best CEOs are perpetual students. They read voraciously. They ask questions constantly. They're genuinely curious about industries beyond their own, about history, about psychology, about art. This isn't because it's trendy or because it looks good on social media. It's because a broad knowledge base is essential for making connections others miss. Innovation often comes from applying ideas from one domain to another. The CEO mindset includes an intellectual humility alongside confidence. You're confident in your judgment while remaining open to being wrong. Finally, the CEO mindset is characterized by what I call productive paranoia. This isn't anxiety or constant worry. It's a clear-eyed understanding that the competitive landscape is always shifting. Industries that seemed permanent have disappeared. Assumptions that held true for decades have become obsolete. A CEO maintains this healthy paranoia. They don't assume that what works today will work tomorrow. They're constantly asking what could disrupt their business. What new competitor could emerge? What technology could change everything? What regulatory change might be coming? This paranoia keeps you sharp. It keeps you innovating. It keeps you from becoming complacent. As you move through this audiobook, remember that the CEO mindset isn't about arrogance. The best leaders I've observed are humble about what they don't know, but confident about their ability to figure things out. They take their work seriously, but not themselves too seriously. They understand that they're part of something larger than themselves. And they're committed to leaving whatever they touch better than they found it. Chapter 2: Vision and Strategic Purpose. Every organization begins with a need. Someone sees a problem in the world and creates something to solve it. But what separates organizations that achieve their full potential from those that plateau is how clearly they articulate and communicate their vision. The CEO mindset requires developing a compelling vision, not as a corporate exercise, but as a genuine North Star that guides all decisions. Let me be direct about something. Most vision statements you see in corporate offices are forgettable. They're created by committee. They're tested with focus groups. They're designed to offend no one and inspire no one. The visions that actually drive organizations are different. They're clear. They're bold. They're personal to the leader. They describe not just what the organization will do, but why it matters. When Steve Jobs described Apple's vision as putting a dent in the universe, that wasn't corporate fluff. That vision guided product decisions. It influenced who got hired. It determined what projects received resources. Developing your vision requires honest introspection. Why does this enterprise exist? What problem are you solving that matters? Who will your success help? And here's the question that separates good CEOs from great ones. What are you willing to sacrifice for this vision? Because every vision requires sacrifice. It requires saying no to opportunities that don't align. It requires making decisions that disappoint people. It requires staying the course when the path is unclear. Once you have a clear vision, the CEO mindset requires translating that vision into strategy. Strategy is often misunderstood. People think strategy means having a detailed plan for 5 years. Actually, strategy is about making intentional choices about how you'll win in your market. It's about resource allocation. It's about competitive positioning. It's about understanding your distinctive capabilities and leveraging them in a way that your competitors cannot easily replicate. Effective strategy includes several critical components. First, a clear understanding of your market. Who are your customers? What are their underlying needs? What are they currently using to meet those needs? What are they willing to pay? This requires research, but more importantly, it requires direct contact with customers. A CEO doesn't make strategy from behind a desk. They spend time in the market. They talk to customers. They observe how products are actually used. They listen to complaints and frustrations. Second, an honest assessment of your competitive position. What are your actual strengths? Not what you wish your strengths were, but what you're genuinely good at. And critically, What are your weaknesses? Every organization has them. The question is whether those weaknesses are fatal to your strategy, or whether you can work around them or improve them. Many organizations fail because they build strategies that depend on overcoming fundamental weaknesses rather than leveraging genuine strengths. Third, clarity about your competitive differentiation. Why should customers choose you instead of someone else? This can't be vague. It can't be about being bigger or older or more established. It has to be specific and defensible. It might be superior technology. It might be exceptional customer service. It might be a business model that's fundamentally different. It might be a brand that resonates emotionally. Whatever it is, it needs to be real, and your customers need to actually perceive it. Strategy also requires saying no. This is harder than it sounds. There are always attractive opportunities. There's always someone suggesting a pivot or an adjacent market to enter. The CEO mindset includes the discipline to stay focused on what you've committed to. This doesn't mean never changing course. It means changing course based on evidence and strategic thinking, not on every bright object that appears. A critical aspect of strategic thinking is understanding the difference between innovation and disruption. Innovation is doing something better. It's an improvement. Disruption is doing something different in a way that fundamentally changes the game. Kodak innovated in photography. But digital photography disrupted the entire industry. Digital camera technology didn't come from within Kodak because Kodak was focused on innovating within their existing business model. The CEO mindset includes staying attuned to potential disruptions while executing your current strategy. It's a delicate balance. Strategy requires time horizons. You need to think about what success looks like in 1 year, 3 years, and 5 years or beyond. These time horizons inform how you make decisions today. If your 5-year vision requires building specific capabilities, you might make different hiring decisions today. If your 1-year goal is building revenue, you might prioritize differently than if your goal is market penetration. Finally, strategy must be communicated relentlessly. Employees need to understand where the organization is going and why. This doesn't mean telling them once in a town hall and considering the job done. Great leaders communicate strategy through stories, through decisions, through how they spend their time. When people see their leader making a decision that seems to contradict the stated strategy, they don't believe the strategy. When they see their leader consistently making choices that align with the vision and strategy, they begin to trust it. Chapter 3. Decision. Making under uncertainty. The CEO mindset is fundamentally about making decisions with incomplete information. Unlike academic exercises where you have all the data, business decisions must be made in real time with uncertainty. Many aspiring leaders get paralyzed by this. They want more data, more analysis, more certainty before committing to a direction. This is a path to irrelevance. By the time you have perfect information, the moment has often passed. The best decision-making framework I've observed in excellent CEOs is surprisingly simple, though difficult to execute. First, you gather the best information available given your time constraints. You don't spend 3 months analyzing something that should be decided in 2 weeks, but you also don't decide immediately without reflection. You ask the right questions. You seek out people with relevant expertise or experience. You look at data when it's available. You're honest about what you don't know. Second, you apply values and judgment. This is where the human element comes in. 2 people with identical information might make different decisions because they weight different factors differently or because they have different risk tolerances. The CEO mindset includes knowing yourself well enough to understand your natural biases. Are you naturally risk-averse or risk-seeking? Do you tend toward action or reflection? Once you know this about yourself, you can compensate for it. A naturally cautious person might push themselves to be more decisive. A naturally impulsive person might force themselves to pause and think. Third, you make the decision. You commit. This is remarkably difficult for many intelligent people. They see the merits of multiple options and struggle to choose. But indecision is itself a decision, and usually not a good one. The CEO mindset includes the ability to commit to a direction while remaining open to adjusting course if evidence suggests it's necessary. This isn't contradiction. It's pragmatism. You're committed to the direction but not wedded to being right. You're committed to the decision but not ignoring feedback. Fourth, you communicate the decision and the reasoning behind it. People need to understand not just what was decided, but why. When they understand the reasoning, they're more likely to buy in, even if they wouldn't have made the same decision themselves. Communication also prevents the insidious problem of decision fade. Organizations make decisions in strategic planning meetings, and then weeks later, people don't actually remember what was decided or aren't sure it was really that important. Fifth, you monitor the results of your decision. Did it have the intended effect? Are new problems emerging? Is the landscape shifting in ways you didn't anticipate? This monitoring phase is where many leaders fail. They make a decision and then move on to the next thing, not actually verifying whether the decision was sound. The CEO mindset includes this follow-through. You measure the results of your decisions so you can learn from them. An important distinction in decision-making is between reversible and irreversible decisions. Amazon CEO Jeff Bezos makes this distinction explicitly. Some decisions are like one-way doors. They're difficult or impossible to reverse. These decisions warrant more deliberation, more consensus, more careful analysis. Other decisions are like two-way doors. You can go through, and if it's not working, you can come back and try something else. For two-way decisions, Bezos advocates moving quickly. You don't need to be as certain. You can decide and monitor and adjust. The CEO mindset includes knowing the difference. Many organizations treat all decisions as if they're one-way doors, causing decision paralysis. Conversely, some leaders treat significant decisions that should be one-way door decisions, like two-way door decisions, creating unnecessary risk. The key is correctly categorizing the decision. Another critical aspect of CEO decision-making is managing your decision-making energy. Research shows that humans have limited decision-making capacity each day. After making multiple decisions, your decision quality deteriorates. This is why successful CEOs often have routines that reduce the number of trivial decisions they make. Steve Jobs wore the same outfit. Mark Zuckerberg wears the same hoodie. These aren't quirks, they're optimizations. By removing trivial decisions, they preserve their decision-making energy for things that matter. The CEO mindset also recognizes that some decisions are best made by others. A CEO who tries to make every decision becomes a bottleneck. Effective leaders develop decision-making frameworks and then delegate authority within those frameworks. An employee knows that if something is under $10,000 and aligns with our strategy, they can make the decision without approval. This empowers people and accelerates the organization. Finally, the CEO mindset requires learning from decisions. After implementing a major decision, the best leaders conduct what's called a pre-mortem or post-mortem. They ask what they could have foreseen. What assumptions turned out to be wrong? What would they do differently? These learnings inform future decisions. Over time, your decision-making improves because you're not just making decisions. You're actively studying your own decision-making process. Chapter 4. Leadership and Influence. You can have the clearest vision and the soundest strategy, but if you can't influence people to execute, you've accomplished nothing. The CEO mindset requires understanding how to lead effectively. But here's what's critical to understand. Leadership isn't about having authority. You can have the title of CEO and still fail to lead. Conversely, you can be an individual contributor and exercise tremendous leadership. Leadership is about influence, and influence is something you can develop. Great leaders understand that different people respond to different approaches. Some people are motivated by financial rewards, some by recognition, some by autonomy, some by the mission, some by belonging to a team they respect. The CEO mindset includes genuine curiosity about what motivates each person. Not what motivates people in general, but what motivates the specific people you're leading. This requires conversation. It requires asking good questions. It requires listening more than talking. There's a pervasive myth about leaders that I want to address directly. The myth suggests that leaders should project confidence and have all the answers. That image is not only false but counterproductive. The most effective leaders are remarkably transparent about what they don't know. They ask for input. They admit mistakes. They change their minds when presented with better thinking. This transparency builds trust. When people see their leader admitting error and learning from it, they feel safer doing the same. This creates a culture of continuous improvement rather than a culture of hiding problems until they explode. The CEO mindset includes what I call earned humility. It's not false modesty. It's a genuine understanding that you're not the smartest person in every room. You've probably forgotten more than your junior employees know, but they might know something critical that you don't. Great CEOs create psychological safety. This is the term coined by Amy Edmondson to describe environments where people feel safe taking interpersonal risks. They can speak up without fear of punishment or humiliation. In these environments, problems get surfaced early. People contribute their best thinking. Innovation flourishes. Building this psychological safety requires consistency over time. You have to demonstrate repeatedly that you welcome input, that you don't punish people for speaking up with bad news, and that you actually listen. This is particularly important for the first conversation where someone brings you concerning information. If you respond defensively or dismissively, word spreads. No one else will bring you bad news. You'll be surrounded by people telling you what they think you want to hear. Leadership also requires making hard choices that disappoint people. You can't be friends with everyone you lead. Sometimes the kindest thing is making a difficult decision rather than avoiding it. If someone isn't performing, it's not kind to pretend everything is fine. It's kind to have a direct conversation about the performance gap and what needs to change. If someone's skills have become irrelevant and they can't adapt, it might be kind to help them transition to something they'll be better suited for, rather than letting them struggle indefinitely in an unsuitable role. Influence extends beyond your direct reports. The best CEOs influence peers, board members, investors, customers, and even competitors. They do this primarily through consistent integrity and clear communication. When people know that you're honest about your capabilities and limitations, when they see that you follow through on commitments, when they observe that you treat all people with respect regardless of their station, you develop credibility. And credibility is the currency of influence. The CEO mindset includes understanding power dynamics. Some power comes from position, but most comes from knowledge, relationships, and perceived value. A person can have significant influence without formal authority. Your credibility, your expertise, your relationships, and your track record of delivering results all create influence. Conversely, someone with formal authority but no credibility has little real influence. Effective leaders also understand the importance of storytelling. Facts and figures persuade the logical mind, but stories persuade people to act. When you can tell a story that illustrates your vision or your values, you create emotional connection. People remember stories far better than they remember statistics. The CEO mindset includes the ability to craft and tell stories that illuminate your point and move people toward action. Leadership requires visibility. You can't lead effectively if people don't know you. You need to be present. You need to be accessible. This doesn't mean you're everyone's friend or that you have no boundaries, but you can't be locked away in an office making decisions from above. The best CEOs spend significant time talking to people throughout the organization, understanding what's really happening on the ground, not just what the reports indicate. Finally, the CEO mindset includes developing other leaders. The best measure of a leader isn't what they accomplished themselves. It's what they accomplished through others. And even more importantly, it's the leaders they developed. When you leave an organization, the true test of your leadership is whether it continues to thrive. If it collapses when you leave, you didn't build leadership, you built dependence. Developing others requires investing in them, giving them opportunities to stretch, providing feedback, and sometimes failing and learning together. The journey of building something significant is filled with setbacks. Products fail. Markets shift. People leave. Economies go into recession. The CEO mindset doesn't deny this reality. It acknowledges it and prepares for it. Resilience isn't about being tough or invulnerable. That's a misunderstanding. Resilience is about how you respond to adversity. It's about your ability to experience disappointment, process it, learn from it, and continue forward. Some of this is temperamental. Some people are naturally more optimistic than others. Some have higher tolerance for ambiguity and failure. But much of resilience can be developed. The first component of resilience is perspective. Difficult periods are normal. Every successful CEO has experienced serious setbacks. Every company has gone through valleys. When you understand this intellectually, it changes how you respond when it happens to you. You don't interpret it as a sign that you're failing or that you should give up. You interpret it as part of the journey. This doesn't mean you become cavalier about problems. You take them seriously. You work intensely to address them, but you maintain perspective about their place in the larger arc of your enterprise. The second component is having systems of support. The CEO role can be lonely. People around you want the appearance of certainty and confidence. You can't share all your doubts and fears with your team because they need to have confidence in your direction. This is why the best leaders have people outside the organization they can be real with. A mentor, a peer group of other leaders, a coach or therapist, someone they can process their fears with, who can help them think clearly, who won't be threatened by their doubts. Adaptability is closely related to resilience. The business environment constantly changes. Technologies emerge. Regulations shift. Customer preferences evolve. Competitors arise. Recessions happen. The CEO mindset requires holding your strategy and plans lightly enough that you can adjust when circumstances change. This doesn't mean changing direction constantly based on every new trend. It means paying attention and adjusting your course when substantial shifts occur. Consider the evolution of successful companies. Kodak invented digital photography but didn't embrace it because they were committed to film. Netflix started as a DVD rental service but adapted to streaming when that became viable. Amazon started selling books online but adapted to become the everything company. These adaptations required leaders willing to question assumptions and change course even when the old way was still profitable. The challenge with adaptability is distinguishing between temporary disruptions that you should weather and fundamental shifts that require change. This is where your judgment matters. You gather information. You listen to people smarter than you in relevant domains. You look at leading indicators. You run small experiments to test new approaches. You make a decision about how much you need to change. Adaptability also applies to your leadership style. The approach that works in a startup might not work in a scaling organization. The approach that works with younger team members might not resonate with experienced team members. The best leaders develop a range of approaches and adjust based on context. This requires self-awareness and flexibility. The CEO mindset also recognizes that you're not in control of everything. Markets crash. Pandemics happen. Key people leave unexpectedly. You can't control these things, but you can control how you respond. You can prepare for possibility of disruption without being paralyzed by it. You can build organizations that are resilient by having redundancy in critical functions, by developing people across the organization, by maintaining financial reserves, by not becoming overly dependent on single customers or markets. Another critical aspect of resilience is maintaining your own well-being. An exhausted CEO makes poor decisions. A CEO who is burnt out loses perspective and effectiveness. The best CEOs I've observed take care of their health. They exercise. They sleep. They maintain relationships and interests outside of work. They understand that their effectiveness depends on their own vitality. Building a resilient organization also means creating a culture where setbacks are treated as learning opportunities rather than failures to be hidden. If people fear failure, they hide problems until they become crises. If they know that setbacks are normal and the response is to understand what happened and learn from it, they surface problems early when they're easier to address. Adaptability extends to your team and organization structure. As your organization grows, or as markets shift, the structure that served you well might become a constraint. The CEO mindset includes regularly questioning whether your current organization structure, systems, and processes still serve your mission or whether they need to evolve. This requires looking at your organization with fresh eyes periodically rather than assuming it's fine because it was working. Finally, resilience and adaptability require a long-term perspective. You're not just trying to succeed this quarter. You're building something that can last and thrive through multiple cycles and changes. This perspective helps you make decisions differently. You're willing to invest in things that don't pay off immediately, but that build capabilities for the future. You're willing to make short-term sacrifices for long-term strength. You're willing to be patient with people and problems because you're thinking about the arc of your organization over years and decades, not weeks and quarters. The CEO mindset at its core is about seeing possibility in the face of uncertainty and having the courage and resilience to pursue that possibility despite setbacks. It's about continuous learning and adaptation. It's about caring deeply about creating value for others while remaining hard-headed about what it takes to build something that lasts. This is the mindset that separates ordinary careers from extraordinary ones. And while it might seem like something only people with CEO titles need to develop, the truth is that this mindset is valuable whether you run an organization, lead a team, manage a project, or even in how you navigate your own life.